You know, one of the first few LucasArts games I ever owned was Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders. Now, it's not the first, and I had gotten it in part because I got mesmerized by Maniac Mansion. But Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders was crazy, futuristic for the time it was made, and literally could be a laugh riot when you think about things. And as I aged, and the game quote aged, I come to realize that in some ways it was a little bit, well, a little bit prophetic. We've almost reached the level of things in the game. But I am digressing. Now, I had picked this game up back in the day of 5 1/4 floppies, and I think, now I could be wrong, it's been years, that it was a game that was on 4 floppies. Again, I could be wrong. Could have only been on 2. And I'm talking the big 5 1/2 floppies that were really floppy disks. Help gave birth to the term of the floppy disk. But it was a fun game. Hailing from an era before LucasArts decided to adopt a you can't die in these games attitude. Or it's damn hard to find a way to die in our games. But in the Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders, you play what is probably an unlikely source for a hero, a tabloid reporter, one who's getting sick of his career and wants to move on to better things. And he sort of gets pulled into, well, he gets pulled into destiny, as he must now help save the Earth before it's too late. And the time that needs to be saved by is very soon. Now, the game was set in 1997. And the world was getting stupider. And this was due to a mysterious hum that appeared on the phone lines. And this was caused actually by aliens. Aliens known as Caponians, who, to disguise themselves, wore hats to cover up their big heads with holes in them to, quote, look out, because their eyes were up on, higher on their head. And with these big hats on, they wore Groucho glasses, so, it looked like they had a nose and eyes in the right spot. Yeah. And you see, these aliens had a plan. They will get this 60 cycle hum going across the world and make everybody dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber so they can easily take over. Makes me wonder if this was actually true and some aliens were doing this, it would really make sense of the past few years. But I'm not here to talk about current events. So, Zak must now work to find a solution. And there are people who are also involved. 3 ladies, 2 co-eds who transform their minivan into a rocket ship and flew to Mars. And a woman who studies ancient cultures. In fact, she appears in Zak McKracken's dreams. Now, this game follows a traditional thing for LucasArts games at the time to use crazy-ass logic to solve problems. And it's one thing to play the originals. And I say this because it is something you have to do. Of course, trick is finding the originals. And it's a very fun game because there is a lot of planning. You have to solve things. Sometimes it helps to make maps or find a strategy guide somewhere and work your way through the different puzzles in different areas. And some puzzles require some pretty obscure logic or pretty weird logic. And some just take being annoying. And one such example is you could pay your phone bill. You find your phone bills late, and you've offered a hefty sum. However, you don't have to pay your bill. All you need to do is wear a disguise that makes you look like one of the, quote, Caponians who are running the phone company. And you can just turn your bill to zero. And some puzzles have multiple solutions. For example, well, some puzzles just have a different way to handle them, and to solve things, you really have to pay attention to other things. But throughout the game, you will encounter other problems or other solutions and get through. And sometimes you don't even have to, you can get caught and get rescued in the same way. As it is, Zak McKracken's apartment's over the phone company. So he can, if you do things right, you can sneak in there and take care of things or rescue somebody who ended up captured. And yes, it can happen. And I have to admit, when you get captured, they lock you in a cell, subject you to the hum, making you dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber. And literally, you have to wait a while for all your command verbs to reappear. It's like you've been stupefied. Now, if you get caught with any of the artifacts you need to win the game, you have to reclaim them. And even they have some usefulness. But this is a fun game. It's a fun game. It's a fun experience. And it has a tie-in. Because if you look in the original versions of both Maniac Mansion and Zak McKracken, there's a little in-joke that they put in there. In Maniac Mansion, you will find a chainsaw in the kitchen. And I might mention this again when I get to Maniac Mansion, but in Zak McKracken, on a hostel in Mars, you will find chainsaw fuel. And if you even look at a poster for Maniac Mansion in Zak McKracken, you note that he says, "I never figured out what to do with that chainsaw." And this was also in the early days of copy protection. So in the old versions, you actually had to look up a code to use the ticket sales machines in the game, which used basically the same type of code book that the code in Maniac Mansion needed. And sometimes you had to use it multiple times, and that I found annoying. But there were some other neat tricks that they put in this game, and you had hilarious moments. You find what looks like an alien, or you find an alien that looks like a broom, and you're like, "It's a dead alien! It's a dead alien!" Oh, wait. And then it's like, I can get past using this as a broom, and then when you get done using it as a broom, it's like, cough, cough, cough. Nope, he was a real alien. He was just sleeping. And the reactions. And some of the solutions to puzzles can be a bit funny or a bit crazy. Using the right things and all that, you can take care of some things. You can use other things. And also, some effects you have may increase the length of other parts of the game. And this is all part of the beauty of its design. Also, you have a nice little trick that they did. The one girl on Mars, you take off her helmet, her hair's one color. You put it on, take it off again, it's another color. And that's people can have fun doing that. Just to cycle through all the colors, and it's worth a laugh. And some characters won't do certain things. Now, as I said, it is possible for a character to die in this game. And there are some jokes that hint on certain hanky-panky things happening. And other things. And that's part of its humor and part of its charm. And of course, in the end of the game, I mean, you work your way. Zak spends his time on Earth and eventually up on Mars. And there's a key little fact that you can do something to all characters have like on Mars you have a limit on your oxygen. So you have to constantly either refill it or find ways to not waste it, i.e. Places where oxygen are not going to be a problem. Or, being able to go without your helmet. So obviously your characters can die of suffocation in the wrong areas. Another example is you can do stuff. You can actually launch the two girls out into space, like they're making their way home. And if you do that, well, they're out of the game. Because I don't think you can actually sit and leave the game on for enough time in game to, quote, return to Earth. It's probably possible. I just don't know how long it would take to complete the task. I mean, you have to remember that Earth and Mars, the distance between Earth and Mars would take approximately, well, at the closest possible point for the two, it would take about 18 months, at the longest 2 years. And that's using current convention. Because they don't use faster than light travel. That would make the trip a hell of a lot quicker. But also, they work in a literally cashless society. Everybody has a cash card, which is pretty much similar to how things are. I don't know how many people will actually use paper currency, metal currency now. I mean, it's still there. But it's probably going to slowly fade away. And even even bums have cash machines, and somewhat seemingly ancient tribes have cash cards to transfer money. I mean, let's face it, that's way out there. It's crazy. And that's also part of the charm. And, I don't know if I mentioned the year yet. This game was set in 1997. I mean, time of this recording, we're at the tail end of 2020, so the game is 23 years off at least. Of course, this game was released in the mid-80s. Back when hard drives weren't necessarily a thing yet. Most games could be run on computer and floppy disks. Although it was getting to the point where we start having internal hard drives to store them all on. And it is a charmer. It is a bit of a charm to play the game. It's fun to mess with. It's fun to play. And as time progresses, it retains some of its charm. And even to this day, I think somebody made an unofficial sequel to it. I've not played it, and maybe one day I'll hunt it down and give it a try. But Zak McKracken was one of those fun games that you could take with you and had some of the fun memorabilia, like tabloid paper, is actually in the game. You have a tabloid paper, which if you read it over carefully, you can actually find some things out, maybe make some connections in the game, which is part of why some of these things were included in games. It was sometimes a form of copy protection. Sometimes it was fun little tidbits that having these things with you just allowed you a better chance of completing the game. And that's all I think I have to say about Zak McKracken. It's a fun game. It's a laugh riot when you play it. I recommend you play it at least once in your life just to look back now and see how crazy we were in the 80s to think that this is what the 90s would look like. And see how off the mark we were. I mean, a universal cash system. Well, we got PayPal now. That can work in that way. But I am digressing. This is Rich Gale here on YouTube, Rich X elsewhere, and I hope you enjoyed this little retrospective on Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders.